Hello and welcome to Obscure Movie Reviews, where we love to take a look at some of the more unknown and ambiguous titles in cinema history. Here we focus on movies that are hard to find, on the older side, relatively unknown, or perhaps they simply lack in popularity. So grab your cotton candy and step right up as we feast our eyes on Carnival of Souls. When a young woman named Mary and her friends are challenged to a drag race, an accident ensues and the women go over the railing of a bridge and plummet into the frigid waters below. It appears that all hope is lost when sometime later Mary emerges from the river without a scratch to show for it. However, Mary is clearly traumatized by the event and leaves her town after securing a job as an organist for a church. However, her demons continue to follow her, quite literally. Carnival of Souls is one of the earliest incarnations of the psychological horror film genre. While it was a box office disaster on its initial release, subsequent television appearances and home video releases have allowed it to garner a cult following. Is that following well-deserved? Well, let's see. Strangely enough, there isn't a lot to say about the actors themselves. Most of the cast for this film were not professional actors, and many of them had little, if any, acting experience before Carnival of Souls. However, the reason that this is interesting is because it doesn't really show. While one might argue that the entire film is a little dated in its approach, the acting is very on par with the performances often seen in the 1960s, and I would have been very curious to see some of these performers take on larger roles in other kinds of films. This is particularly true for Candice Hilligoss, who played Mary. You truly feel her breakdown happening, and she gives a raw and emotional performance.
There was someone else there. That strange man was there.
The rest of the cast is perfectly serviceable, but Hilligoss gave a performance truly worthy of the atmosphere and terror that's being presented. While the rest of the cast isn't given much to do, they give a healthy counterbalance to Hilligoss's terror-stricken Mary. For those reasons, the acting will get an 8 out of 10 for being really good. At an hour and 24 minutes, this film isn't very long, but the methodical pace often runs the risk of feeling like it's dragging. However, each scene has the remarkable sense of being just short of too long. It seems that if any scene lasted even a few seconds longer, it would have been too much. This does a good job of adding to the anxious atmosphere, but does cause some scenes to feel like they're going somewhere, and then they don't. There are a few moments within the film that feel just a little tedious, but more often than not, it's just right. We'll award it a 6 out of 10 for having above average pacing. Carnival of Souls was directed by Herc Harvey. Harvey had a background in theater and got into filmmaking as an actor in several minor roles before writing Carnival of Souls. He also, uncredited, plays the man that continuously stalks our main character. With a budget of just $30,000, one might expect that the cinematography might suffer greatly. However, this is only partially true. Harvey may not have been an experienced director, in fact Carnival of Souls would be his only feature film that he directed, but a tremendous amount of the eerie atmosphere created is from the cinematography. The lighting, camera angles, film warping, and even the cheap makeup all work together to create an unsettling feeling. Now, don't get me wrong, it's cheap looking. It is by no means a masterclass in what can be created off of no budget, but it is still rather impressive to look at in many scenes. That said, it'll get a 5 out of 10 for having average cinematography. The soundtrack is mostly serviceable. The audio quality has been restored more in recent years, so modern copies of the film sound pretty good. But there are still times where the audio quality of conversation is pretty sketchy and becomes a little hard to understand. The music, on the other hand, is just menacing. I don't know what it is about the sound that just hits your spine in the right way. Any atmosphere that isn't created by the cinematography is completed by the music. The score was composed by Gene Moore, who, frankly, didn't do much else. He has a lot of credits for music on short films, but like Herc Harvey, Carnival of Souls is his only feature film credit. But it might also be his best work. While dialogue recording isn't always quality, the music makes up for it in spades. That'll give Carnival of Souls a 5 out of 10 for having an average soundtrack. This is one of those films that works by keeping the plot very simple. It's so simple, in fact, one could argue that it didn't need to be a feature film. It has very much a Twilight Zone vibe, which makes sense as it's been stated that the story was indeed inspired by the Twilight Zone episode The Hitchhiker. Mary is distraught after surviving the accident that claimed the lives of her friends. She attempts to leave home and start over somewhere else, but she's constantly being haunted by apparitions of dead people that pursue her relentlessly. She's slowly drifting into madness as these visions become more and more frequent. The real question the movie keeps asking throughout is what is real and what isn't. While the plot in and of itself is very simple and straightforward, the premise is still a little heady and ahead of its time. So it'll get a 6 out of 10 for having an above average story. There is a little insight that you might gain on a second watch, and hardcore horror enthusiasts tend to revisit films like this for the sheer fun of it. I would say that it definitely is worth watching multiple times, but you won't garner too many new insights. The twist ending certainly makes you want to see it again and look for clues or signs, but there aren't really any to find. It'll get a 4 out of 10 for having below average rewatchability. I was first introduced to this movie as a trailer on an old VHS tape called Horrible Horror, hosted by the incomparable Zachary. Maybe I'll do a profile on him in the future. But ever since then, I've been anxious to see it and was astonished by how much I enjoyed it. For me, this film gets a solid 8 out of 10 for just being really good, especially considering the people and budget that made it come to life. That will give Carnival of Souls an overall score of 6 out of 10, making it an above average film. Thank you for checking out that obscure movie review. You can see our other obscure movie reviews on our page, and if you like content like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be up to date on the latest content that we have. Content just like this.